Thanks for being here. Such a pleasure to have you. It's a cold afternoon. I'm frozen. I'll try to warm you up. I don't do those kind of things. You're going to stand up and do the exercises. Sometimes someone did it, right? We were in a conference not later than a month ago. Someone did it. I'm Nick Palmarini. I'm the director of the UK National Innovation Centre for Aging. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're going to talk about cities. I'll try to squeeze my intro, but I just need to give you a sort of a context about what are we doing around cities and why city matters to longevity. Then I will introduce my fantastic panelists. There will be an open conversation. We'll go with a couple round of questions, and then it's open to you, because you are the citizens, we are the citizens, we're all part in this thing. There is no stage and people attending. It's ourselves in sharing experiences, so they will tell you about their stories and their experience, but also we need to hear from you. Briefly about the cities as champions of prevention, which sits inside an initiative that the National Innovation Centre for Aging we started not later than 3-4 months ago, after 2 years of incubation. It's called City of Longevity. And let me tell you why we're introducing this idea of City of Longevity. There's a lot of literature around cities and aging. I'm sure you are all aware about the amazing job done by Age-Friendly Cities at the WHO. It's a set of recommendations that has been established roughly 15 years ago. And it's a sort of a fantastic starting point. It's the left document you see here that somehow allow us to understand why cities are relevant to aging. And first of all, suggesting that since there is an aging demographic, cities should have to do something. There's a lot of literature on the topic. I just put you something about it. The last document you see on the right is from the World Bank. We at the center contributed, and you see there is already a shift in the narrative from the age-ready to the longevity-ready cities, which suggested there's something moving in this idea on how cities could be supporting somehow an aging demographic. Now, but let's focus for a second what's the role of the cities. And if you see the word here is not necessarily only cities, it's also local governments. So if you think, first of all, that cities are only big entities, probably you should have to rethink about it. We can consider a city, and then could be different ways. Roughly, there is a definition about cities are 2,000 inhabitants unit in Europe. In Japan, it's 50,000. But we tend to say if there is a local government that they can take a decision, we can consider it as a city. So think also rural areas, not only cities per se. So what's the role of cities? You see Romans up there on the right say something, and if you go around London and wherever in the world, you see that salus populi suprema lex exto, meaning that the health of the people should be, I think Romans were quite wise in putting a conditional there, should be the main thing you should have to care about. And it's not an entity there that rules your life. It's promoting and it's responsible for the well-being of a community and a place. That's what a city is. That's what the role of a local government is. Meaning that there is not a narrative on health, net zero, transportation. No. Health is the achievement. Transportation, net zero, entertainment are all things that should matter to the health of the people. Two things that I guess we have discussed all days in the last 2 days. I'm not saying anything new. Aging does not begin when a population gets old, and we know it. And we can accelerate. That's, I think, it's a core point we're bringing to the table today. From the concept of the age-ready or longevity-ready. Why we should have to be ready? We are already ready. It's happening. So why we should have to wait for these things to happen? Can we move faster and forward? Let me put 3 things that I guess probably we all agree. The challenge is just to develop social innovation that will help people remain healthy and productive over the course of longer lives. I'm not saying, again, anything new, I guess. But again, just state it. The second point is that we don't have to wait anymore. Why to wait? We think we can build it. All the things we're discussing and we'll discuss in a second, you will see examples that are already happening. So why to wait? We can go ahead, and we're already ready, as I said before. And finally, the decision we're taking now are a decision for the life course. It's not a decision for all people like a panda reserve waiting for us to take some decision. It are decisions for the course of life, which are affecting the different generations, because a city is lived by different generations. What we are suggesting is a paradigm shift from a quite passive approach. So the concept of be ready to something is going to happen, So a kind of a reactive, like the city is there looking at the window, people getting old, and the city needs to adapt. In shifting the narrative, can the city be the actor or the champions of prevention, as we are discussing today? So can the city be a proactive actor with infrastructure, touch points, heritage, cultural exchange, proximity? All these things are the things that are in the city and can be something that could accelerate our support to help people living healthier, longer lives. Now, the City of Longevity, what it is, it's what you see here. It's an evidence-based set of KPIs to help citizens and tourists live longer, healthier lives by promoting cultural heritage and behavioral triggers to the existing infrastructure. You see something happening on the right. It's a toolkit. So what we're developing, it's not only a concept, it's a toolkit that can help cities to design their own policies, putting together what we call the elements of, let's call it longevity for a second, identifying who are the targets we would like to involve, what are the issues that you would like to address, how to make it happen, how to measure it. Two things that were missing in the WHO model. The first one, it's a measurement. There are the KPIs, but there are no ways on how to measure these KPIs. And it's connected to the second thing is missing. Smart cities are something that is happening literally right now. They're based on data. You can understand what is happening in the city through the analysis of this data. Meaning that we can not only simply now suggest policies or intervention, but we also can measure it and be a lot faster than waiting the census to suggest us, oh yes, in 5 years we will know if life expectancy has happened or not after an intervention. We can measure it, and we can measure it a lot faster. Moreover, if you see this logic of the formulas, as we call it, we are creating a model that could be exported. We're literally taking the same narrative of what is happening in computers. You know, application programming interfaces is a way in which you collect the data and you expose this data through an interface. And if you just follow for a second the same logic, you design a formula, you expose this formula through an interface which is the city. The interface is different. Hence, you have to respect the different cultural heritage. Because if you are, for example, want to do intervention on nutrition of people, you have to be aware that in Spain you go to a restaurant at 9 p.m. while in UK at 5:30. And then you have to understand where the touch point where you would like to make an intervention, which is following the cultural heritage of that country. We've launched it on the 6th of July in Newcastle. We have a second run literally 2 weeks ago in Barcelona, which was fantastic because we could touch literally with our hands what is a City of Longevity is. If you've ever been in Barcelona, you're probably aware about Super Illes, the super neighborhood. They're literally redesigning the city from the ground up with a very small intervention, which is making the city centers as a kind of open spaces where people can meet and stay together. They start having the first data coming from this experience because they started 3 years ago. And these data are very interesting because are suggesting how, for example, urban infrastructure is helping longevity. And it's just one dimension, but it's so interesting because you see live. That's what we're trying to say before. We don't have to wait. Everything is already happening. So why not to take advantage of what is happening to make people living healthier for longer? Here we are today. So that's our third step. In a month from today or less, we'll be in Riyadh for the Evolution Foundation. Again, the topic will be on stage. And in March 2024, we'll be in Milano for the Milano Longevity Summit, which is again another step. And along this process, we're involving more and more cities. Right now, we have 15, 16 cities roughly in the network. And we have from Buenos Aires to Barcelona, from Lisbon to Newcastle per se. More cities are joining because they are interested in understanding how we can translate and help them to deliver this type of intervention. If you want to join us, that's how you can get in touch with this project. But right now, without further ado, let me welcome you to Cities as Champions of Prevention and invite my amazing panelists on stage. Stephen McPeak, Civic Dollars. Just a warm applause to them, thank you. The amazing, well-known Tina Woods, it's Business for Health. Alexei Strigin from Gero AI, or Gero. And Aviva Wittenberg-Cox from 21st. They made me notice that it's a very gender balanced panel. It happens by chance, but we try to do as much as we can to keep this rule. So thank you so much for being with us today. It's fantastic to have you here, honestly. You have a very different expertise. Obviously, we could probably cover this topic from the 100 perspective you can imagine. If you see this kind of periodic table before, you see how many elements are there that we can consider elements of building a city of longevity. So we'll see and we'll hear from 4 different angles. Each one of them is absolutely interesting. Tina maybe will help us to just make a sort of a frame around it. However, there could be so many different aspects. I know Eric Killstrom is in the room. Transportation could be one of the topics, which is not there, but it's in the room. And many of you could bring some of the angles. So feel free, hopefully we will have enough time to have some discussion about something that probably won't be told today. There's one thing around cities, or at least 2 things around cities. One is the cities of the 15-minute cities, which is a big topic. Everybody is discussing about this thing. Every city in Europe is a 15-minute cities already. The concept of proximity of services is probably not enough. You should have, or we should have, to talk about the proximities of humans. And it's again what you see in Barcelona. You see the proximity of services. It's a 15-minute cities like London is a 15-minute cities. But then you see the proximity of people talking, interacting together, generating a different source for longevity. That is probably what we should look at for. The second are the blue zones. You have heard about it. They're just a long story. Now on Netflix, they just ramped up back again. Fantastic marketing stories for the Americans. Why I'm saying so? Because do we have to look for those places where people is living 100 years and try to harness the secrets? We know the secrets. Walk, stay active, sleep well, eat well, try to have a good social relations. These are the basics that will help us avoid the chronic diseases. So we don't need those secrets. We don't need the superhumans that are climbing the Everest. We need to make the city understand that these are the drivers for longevity. So with them, we will discuss about this thing. And my question, my first question to you, and Tina will be the first one. Do we need a city of longevity? Do we need to tell the world that these are the basics? And why it's so important that we do it? That's my first broad question.
So I think the fact that we're talking about city of longevity rather than aging, for example, I think it's basically a signal that we need a whole new kind of way of talking about it and a whole new frame and a much more, I guess, positive way of looking at getting older, because I mean, through my experience, I mean, this has been one of the big problems is we're trapped in ageism, language that confuses people, and the fact that we have to segment us into young, old. So I think there's a whole issue around that, but I think a lot of it is around, and the reason why I think the cities of longevity and why we need it is it's quite clear that we need healthier environments. And we do need to take a life course approach. This is not just about when you hit 50 or 60 or when you start getting chronic diseases. I mean, actually, we need a whole life course approach to this. And we also know, and just to the points that you were discussing about, we as human beings, we have to understand that the whole way that we feel about ourselves, our psychology, our behavior, actually, and things like of hope and loss and optimism. I mean, these are really important humans, and we need to have that sense in the environments in which we live. So I think, again, we need to create those positive environments. We know that things like stress from work, eating bad food, eating too much junk food, air pollution, having too little sleep, for example, that really affects our whole biology of aging and how we age, our whole health trajectory. And more research is pointing to that. So, the government, they've got various sort of missions in place. And of course, we've got a lot of research taking place with the biology of aging. In fact, I'm a trustee at the British Society for Research on Aging, and there's amazing cutting edge research. And actually, the next frontier, which I think is really exciting for the City of Longevity program and some of the other stuff that I know we're working on together, it's the new frontier. It's like how we as human systems, very complex beings, are affected by our wider environments. And the fact is, and the why, the Burning Platform has arrived in so many ways. We have an incredibly unhealthy Britain at the moment. We can just see the stats being poured, coming out in the newspapers every day. work inactivity, productivity crisis, the plus 50s falling out of the labor market, the mental health crisis is actually so bad now that we've actually got young people falling out of the labor market. It is actually affecting our prospects for economic growth. So we actually do need some big, bold solutions, and we need to address, and we have areas around the country and high areas of deprivation. Glasgow, for example, where life expectancy is dropping. We see that in the US, the richest country in the world. Something is not right. So we need a new approach. And I think what's interesting and what you're seeing with the devolution agenda and the focus on place-based health, and if I can just say one more thing before I stop, we just heard Chris Whitty speak about his latest report. Now, he talks about, coastal towns, rural areas, very deprived areas, which don't have the good jobs, which aren't getting the transportation links, which see young people having to go to London to get the jobs, a fragmentation of communities. This is the reality that we need to crack with something like a Longevity City program and creating those healthy environments where people want to be, where we can work, where companies want to invest in. And I think you mentioned blue zones. Well, actually, what I found really interesting is that it's going back to basics. We know actually how we thrive, as human beings. So these are actually really basic principles. Yes, we've got the Netflix program and blue zones, but actually all the stuff that Chris Whitty was talking about, it is absolutely about going back to basics.
Yeah, because one of the discussion will be, we don't need to highlight the fact that there are some, again, special things. Can we make every place a blue zone, if you call it a blue zone, or a city of longevity? Can we? And we think we can.
A measurable blue zone.
Measurable. Aviva, you brought the sun. You next. What do you think from your perspective?
What it takes, I think it would take multi-stakeholders working together. And one that I find is absolutely not got this issue on the agenda yet, which is basically employers. I think a lot of companies, there's so many people in health and in wealth. Those seems to be the two pillars of the initial push on this longevity-ready idea. But there's a whole group of players that I think are very little involved yet in this conversation, and that's the private sector. And I think it's partly because they are so imbued with a historical understanding of what careers and work look like. So we know that our demographic pyramids are shifting from triangles, pyramids, to squares. We call this aging a lot. I think, as Chris Whitty also called, is for a bit of a marketing or branding shift. And so what if we looked at this new square not as an aging problem, but one of generational balance? We've done gender balance. We've even done it on the panel here, not exactly on the walls. You've got a little bit of work to do, Nick, on the walls. But
is cricket a men's sport? I don't know.
It looks like it.
I'm not an expert in cricket, so I'm the worst probably in the room.
But this generational balance means that our workforces are going to be balanced between the over 50s and under 50s in companies where almost the entire system, careers, career progression, financial rewards, are based on under 50 models. I always divide this new life patterns that we're talking about into 4-quarter lives, partly because I work in the business world, and they're always talking about quarters, Q1, Q2, how is your performance, can you measure it? Well, what if we measured and divided up our life into 4 quarters? Employers are almost entirely focused on what I call Q2. Those are the years from 25 to 50. The first 25 years we learn, the second 25 years we achieve, and this third quarter, which I think is the new piece of our longer lives that's emerging, that many of us are trying to figure out how to make healthier, more engaged, more community, more city-based, is largely nudged out of work. You know that people or in the UK, it's a drastic example of people falling out of employment in their 50s already, let alone the kind of delaying of retirement ages that most governments are looking at to meet their financial targets. So this Q3 engagement is something we need to put on every corporate strategic agenda. And it is almost entirely absent. And really, every city that is mostly, I always find cities are where most of us, most humans, are going to live within a short couple of decades. And we are all employment hubs. And to have a vibrant city, you need a vibrant workforce that's engaged and working. Increasingly, that means it's going to have to be generationally balanced and intergenerational between Q2ers and Q3ers. And what we have right now is overstressed, mentally challenged Q2ers who are burning out because there's too much asked of them in too short a space of time. And by the way, they're not having any babies because they don't have any time for that, which means we're going to age all that much faster. And Q3ers are being nudged out because nobody thinks they want to work.
One thing that I think allows you to see the complexity, but also why the city is meaningful, is the question from me to you: where are the employers? Are in the cities. So even if you are self-employed and you're working from home, that is your office. So the city and work are one thing. Where did you have your sandwiches when you just have a break in your lunch? So you're stepping out, you're an employee, you open the door, you become a citizen or a resident. We can discuss about the word citizens, okay? And in fact, in our model, we just are very careful in defining who are the citizens. And then you step back and you become back again an employee of that organization, which belongs physically to the city. So the interactions between yourself as a citizen or an employee, it's so somehow framed within the city. And that's where we can suggest policies of intervention for the city supporting the workers, for the employers supporting the employees, which I think allows you to think why the model could resonate well, because we can translate a lot of policies within the city. Alexei, my panelists are jeopardizing all my follow-up questions, so we go free flow as usual.
So,
can you tell a little bit about what you do, and so that it can understand what's the reason why you're here?
Yeah, sure. We are on a little bit of a radical longevity side. So we are a longevity biotechnology company. We are trying to understand the process of aging itself and how we can stop it on molecular level. But I totally agree with Nick. It is something that is 10, probably 15 years away. If we are lucky, probably 8 years away, but we are probably not lucky. So, but we can do a lot of things today already, and the technology we have developed provides some side technology we can use to actually measure health at the city scales, at the municipality scales, and even at the scale of a small country. And what Nick said during his presentation is actually we can do these feedback loops of what actually works in the cities and don't wait a couple of years until we get the morbidity and mortality data. We can get it like in a week or in a couple of days already. So that's what our technology provides us the opportunity to do. But like why cities longevity is important. I always give an example. Imagine von Braun and Korolev, the engineers who were doing the space age race between Soviet Union and United States. Imagine them living for just additional 10 healthy years. We've been already on the moon as a species. And like every city has hundreds, probably thousands, very talented people, tens of thousands talented people. And we just are losing on like 5 or 10 prime years, which they might be able to contribute, but they are not. They're just fighting an age-related disease. But like if we approach it on a city level, we might just be doing so much more for humanity advancement to the future. So I think it's super important, and I think we should be doing that.
Yeah, a couple of things on this note, if I may add. The first one, we also need, as healthy, to support others, to give back to be ourselves the actor of not necessarily reinventing something, but be part of a network. So if you think about the projection, yes, for sure, we'll live healthy for longer, but still will be people that will be sick. I think it's a stupid thing to think that we'll be superhumans forever and ever. It's not what we want to achieve. We want to achieve the best of ourselves in the best environment with the best people around us. And we want to give back to these people. So the healthiness of ourselves in terms of longevity is also to be supportive to others. So again, I think it's quite interesting to understand that there is not a mission per se, the healthy longevity of humanity. It's a mission also for making this planet to hopefully thrive for all the others and just make ourselves a part of it. And I think it's part of the mission also with our invention, which is connected with what Aviva was saying, which is connected with what Tina was saying. And again, I think what is interesting from Alexei's point of view is that we can start from a very selfish approach to longevity that is typical in the narrative today. Oh yes, wearables, patches, whatsoever, all these technologies that allow us the quantified self, to understand the quantified self. Can we shift this to a neighborhood or to a city? And if we do it, how we can, for example, understand how we can improve when we know that an intervention is meaningful. Which leads me to Stephen. Which is doing the things from a completely different perspective, because Stephen is caring about engaging the citizen. You heard probably from him today, but if you'd like to briefly tell about what you do and why it's relevant to engage the citizens.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Nick. I'm Stephen from Civic Dollars. We've created a community currency platform that's been used as one of the healthy aging projects with Innovate UK. Our platform rewards people for spending time outdoors. You don't have to walk, run, cycle. You just have to spend time outdoors and you earn a civic dollar for every 30 minutes you spend there. You can get rewards for yourself or you can donate them to local community groups and charities, which has been the real winner for us. For the Healthy Aging Project, we've been able to tag the older generation, the participants in the project, and offer them unique rewards that only they can see, so they can get 6-week courses in dancing with a tea dance at the end of it, Pilates, yoga, fitness, Tai Chi, been able to support their local men's shed, go for fishing trips for men. So it's very community orientated, and the ladies that are running it for me that are here, they do it very group based. It's group based of how to earn it and group based of how to spend it. So they go out, they organise the walks to earn the civic dollars, and then they help them with the rewards to improve their lifestyle. And we've already generated over 8,000 hours since May. Of the older people spending time in the parks around Belfast. So it's been a great result for us. But as you say, you don't like the 15-minute cities. I would spin that and say I would like 15-minute cities if it meant you were always 15 minutes away from a park or an open space where you can spend time and enjoy that mindfulness. Even if you don't go for a walk or a run, you still have that mindfulness of being in a green area or a blue zone if there's water there. Not your blue zones. But as for the city's longevity, and I know we've been talking about it since March time, and I've always loved the concept of it, especially, I suppose, being an SME. It's all about speed. Like, we don't report to anybody. We've built the platform so far without taking an investment or giving out equity, so we have nobody to answer for. So being agile, especially in this field, and I like to say smart regions as opposed to smart cities because I'm very rural based. So I like to cover the rural, go with the farmers. So cover those areas too. But speed of making decisions, of being able to tweak rewards to have that impact. We survey our groups and communities and users on a weekly basis to see what's going to encourage them to spend time outdoors. We had a big uptake of meals, talking about gender balance, as part of this project. So we went and spoke to the men's shed to see what would encourage them to get their guys out. And they said, for an example, they had polytunnels built for them by the council, funded, but they had no tools or seeds. So we said, right, if you get 150 civic dollars donated to you, we'll give you a home-based voucher where you can go and get your tools and your seeds. So they were beating their get out into that park and earn some civic dollars so we can get these tools. So and that's, again, the project around cities longevity. We can put in that case study on it and how we've seen the problem, we've changed it, or we've put in that effect to influence behavioural change. And we've seen the results coming out, and that's what the city of longevity is all about.
So a couple of things. The first one, I think what Stephen is suggesting us is that we need support in making a change. It's very hard to change our lifestyles. Who loves to do a diet? Raise the hand. So there's a nudging which is a technique, as you know, to support people to do small little changes that could really then make the big change. And it's one of the things that cities can really do a lot, and this is an example. Please do not misunderstand me. I'm not against the blue zones or the 50-minute cities. I'm just saying that we don't need dogmas anymore. That's what I'm saying. We don't need documents and dogma. There's a lot of evidence there. We just need free models that help cities to basically make happen what we think it's the next dogma. Because we're keep on inventing dogmas. It's probably, I mean, who wants to do it? Do it. But we can somehow create a system to help others to take advantage of the evidence that we know, of the information that we have, all the research that we're popping up, but we can only help organizations like cities with the basic information to do themselves. We can support them to do themselves. We just have to provide the tools, the evidence, the knowledge. We're doing it today, but not necessarily says, oh, you have to be 50 minutes. What if it are 60 minutes? I have been in discussion in city councils where they're just discussing for 3 hours about the 16 or the 15 minutes. In Glasgow is the 20-minute city. Again, do we need it? No, we need to tell them that it's important that make action for the citizens and give some support to make it happen. That's it. Because otherwise we keep on discussing the next dogma tomorrow, the 10,000 steps. Do we want to discuss if 10,000, 5,000, 2,000? Or the last thing, just do something. It's enough. Don't stay home doing nothing. That's bad. But if it's 10,000 and you've done 9,400, okay, that's where I think we can start supporting a step forward, and with the evidence that we can bring, we can then understand if it works or not. And if not, quickly change it, instead of waiting for the next 3 years that the next document will come. That's where we are today. We're trying to build. Tina, I give you back the ball quickly to have a second run, because I really would like to have you to just be part of the discussion. You can take it from many perspectives. There is one thing. You are literally sitting at the intersection of public and private, many hybrid, which we know it's probably the key word. Can we make it happen or not somehow to convince these two sides of the apple to come together and just make the magic?
So I see everything in terms of a system change, re-gearing exercise, and that's what we need. We need to re-gear our sick care-based model at the moment to a much more preventative health model. And to re-gear that, and you mentioned the word nudge. It is literally about nudging the ecosystem with the right incentives for us to do things differently. And of course it takes, and it's not just private or public, it is a multi-perspective, and of course involves citizens, it involves third sector. And and I basically have been operating in that sort of the intersection between all these different stakeholders as far, as part of a system change approach. And so did some work, work with the APPG for longevity, which produced a huge report, again informed by a very multi-stakeholder sort of exercise, really looking at how we can achieve impact to achieve the government manifesto commitment of healthy life expectancy and reducing health and well-being inequalities, which of course is the Levelling Up policy paper, and out of which came ideas around business for health. And I think things have actually changed quite a lot with the business world. I think when the industrial strategy was first published in 2017 with the Healthy Aging Challenge, and I was working very closely with UKR Research and Innovation on developing the ecosystem around those companies who might want to be involved in the transformative bids. This is like 3-4 years ago now. Yes, I agree. I think companies were well behind the curve. They were focusing on the millennials. They had no, the commercial and social imperative to really get this right was just sort of missing. That has changed a lot, and I think because of the health crisis that we face, and actually because we're suffering from a skills shortage. Yes, Brexit has been part of that, but it's actually because of the dropout that we're seeing. I think a lot of companies are moving very quickly to support older workers. There's a session this morning. I'm wearing my Business for Health hat. There's a lot of energy and things that are happening in the private sector to keep the older workforce in work, because they have to. Needs must, because we have a huge skill shortage, and actually, it is really critical. Yeah. Of course, the government have announced those policies recently to get people to return back to work, support people, the plus 50 MOTs, et cetera, let alone the crisis that we have with our younger populations. Intergenerational, absolutely, we have a problem there that we need to fix, and I think this goes at all levels. But I think just finally, my one point, and again, and I know we're working with the National Innovation Centre for Aging on this, there's a huge prize to be won, especially with the whole sort of science and technology framework, to really kind of seize a global leadership position on harnessing what Britain does do very well. Still, we've got financial services, life sciences industry, the creative industries. We've got this huge opportunity now to do really amazing stuff on the world stage. So this is underpinning the Quantum Healthy Longevity Innovation Mission, in which, of course, Longevity Cities is a central element of that. So we're literally looking at ways in which we can show that prevention can pay. And if you do it in a local testbed sort of approach, if you save on healthcare costs and reinvest in regions in place, around an innovation cluster type concept, and City of Longevity is actually part of that. That really starts, that is interesting, because if we can show that investing for health, taking that long-term view, because we'll keep on saying the NHS has to invest in prevention, that's not coming, we have to have a whole different way of doing it, I think. And this is, I think, the exciting territory that we're playing in. This concept around the exposome we've written about in the Lancet. If you want to Quantum Healthy Longevity exposome, you'll find the Lancet article. It shows the whole approach that we're taking, harnessing quantum, systems biology, new thinking in AI, to really understand what is it that keeps the secret to human flourishing, how we can understand it and then put that into policy and investment to re-gear the system around prevention.
Thanks, Tina. Alexey, two questions for you in this moment. So the first of all, you're working with some cities. So what are they asking you? What is the things they're looking for? And second, do you think, as Tina's saying, that somehow technology can help us to accelerate some of this point, understanding better humans in neighborhoods? I'm very interested in how you translate from the individual to the societal dimension and how technology can help.
Yeah, sure. Well, the short answer is, of course, yes. I think technology will help us. The work we are doing with the cities, we have approached several cities, and we are now discussing closely with Singapore, one of the best cities in the world, in terms of working on prevention and working with the aged population. And they are a little bit ahead of Europe in terms of this, what was called a gray wave or a silver tsunami crisis. They are one of the 3 countries that are already having this problem of a very, very old population, and they have to do something today with it already. So if you look at Singapore, the other countries like that is South Korea and Japan. It's what would be happening with Europe, the UK, and other developed world in 10, 15 years or so. So they are also interested in exactly what we are saying. So it was like very funny joke that Barzilai, after talking with Singapore, tells in his book that he's saying that metformin should be a good way to add several healthy years to lifespans, and he's been saying that to Prime Minister of Singapore, and you know what Prime Minister asked him? Shall we put it in a water supply? So they kind of looking for city and countrywide approaches to make their population healthier, because otherwise they will just break down under the economic load of just caring for these people. So they asking for exactly that, the shorter feedback loops, how to prioritize resources for prevention. And they already have, for instance, a governmental run application with 1 million of Singaporeans using that. And that's about 20% of their population. So it's like, I don't know of any applications in the UK which would have like 20% of population. So they're quite advanced in that. And yes, they want to understand what subpopulations are at the highest risk of having age-related diseases or something, or what subpopulation on what demographic needs healthcare attention the most, because you have very limited resources you can devote to this kind of things. So yeah, I think it's a good city to look at as a model. And as a city, as an example of what would be happening with other cities in the future, and I hope we will sign an agreement with them, and I will be able to tell you much more. But let's see what happens. Probably next year.
Which the key question brings to Stephen, can we make Belfast as Singapore? So, because Singapore is easy, okay? As you know, the story of the city is quite a, let me say, controlled environment, which you can design and deliver policies in a quite straightforward way. Can we bring those concepts to us, to Europe? That's what we try to do with the City of Longevity. So, in your experience, Stephen, what are the data you have from the, nudging people with some good actions that can pay off? Can application like yours, which somehow are empowering the citizen to understand why it's meaningful to do something, but I also get something back if I do something good for me and for the environment and the city, can we make other cities become like Singapore?
Yeah, I don't see why not. The technology's out there, and there is that will. People do want to do it, and I suppose nudge is a bit of a dirty word at the minute. People are very anti-authoritarian, so we always use encourage encourage people to do things. And I suppose one of the big problems is nobody wants to do anything for nothing. They need that incentive. And it's not just an incentive for themselves. Like what we've seen with our project in Dublin, with 43% of all the civic dollars were donated to the community groups and charities. So, and that's the reason people don't have cash anymore to donate to these groups, but they have time that they can spend in the park and donate to them. So they like that feeling of giving back, and it was especially the older generation that were doing that, which was really interesting. But even the small rewards, you have to look at the research we got from Queen's University at the very start of when people will do something for a reward and when they'll start to cheat for it. And it's trying to hit that sweet spot in the middle of just getting enough grit to get them to do something for that reward. But yeah, a lot of the solutions out there, they're mobile first, so there's no hardware required. Like ours, we spun up Dublin over a weekend, so it's very easy to activate a smart city tech or smart region tech in these cities and globally, because everyone has a smartphone. And if you don't need any other hardware, then it's very easy to activate it and impact quickly, as opposed to writing a policy, doing a document, having a look about it, shelve it. 3 years later, let's do something around healthy aging. And that's something that really irritates me, and especially just to name check the councils in Northern Ireland. They obviously got funding to create healthy aging coordinators in each of the councils. But these are just people who have been, one's from planning, one's from leisure services, that have been there that long, that have just been shoehorned into this position. They wouldn't know healthy aging if it bit them in the ass. Yeah. So like, you're fighting a losing battle from that. From the difference in what we're seeing in the States as well, there is an appetite there for healthy aging, longevity, and quick impact. Yeah. And that's what we want to take.
I'm sure someone in the room says, okay, what about digital divide? It's part of the play. We don't have time also for that conversation, but trust is something that we're heavily discussing, even in how you can empower citizens, leveraging the analogic interactions that could achieve the same goals. What is important, I think, as a takeaway, just we need to empower citizens to be aware about what are the impacts for themselves and for the others.
Actually, the digital divide, from the research we've done with our projects, we've seen that the older people, I think the usage of smartphone has went up to 95% as opposed to 65% before COVID. So they have access to the tech. But one of the big things we found, it's data poverty, not tech poverty. So their SIM plans don't include data. So a lot of the older people were staying at home so they could stay online. So that's why that was just creating social isolation as well. But community is the key to the whole thing. You have to get the communities involved, buy-in from them. If the government tells people to do something, you have no chance.
Yes, you know.
So anti-authoritarian.
The nanny-state, I know. I learned this thing.
When you come from a low level, a peer level of a community group or a charity, asking you to do something, go out and help us, it has far greater reach.
Which leads me to you, Aviva, for the last round, and then open the stage. You wear two hats here, because one is about the work side and the other one is diversity. Would you like to address a little bit about the importance of diversity in cities and workplaces somehow from your perspective?
Well, yes, I think the inclusion aspect of everything about aging, including the word aging, which is not a very inclusive word because it eliminates half the population, which is basically the younger half that doesn't necessarily want to get involved. And we know from all of us who are working on sort of midlife transitions and trying to get the mindsets of citizens to change and adapt to longer lives, is most of the people it attracts. And the word itself, words and language matter extraordinarily in this space. When you say midlife, it attracts women, and it doesn't attract men. So yeah, male tents and all this kind of sheds and strategies. We're going to need more inclusive language, and I think we have a massive marketing exercise to do on how to rebrand this whole topic. I think a bit of healthy competition, not nudging, because I know what that might mean, but a bit of competition. Isn't it interesting that we know exactly what it takes for individuals to age healthily? You just reeled it off really fast. We know, most of us, where those blue zones are. How many of us are able to say, what are the top 10 cities for being longevity ready in the world? I don't. Do you? Madrid, that's the oldest. Is it the
Barcelona.
longevity ready? What about companies? Do you know what the top 10 companies in the world are who are longevity ready? I don't. Why don't we have those rankings? When will we? And what will we call them? Will we call them healthy aging, longevity ready, or something much more inclusive of everybody, which is basically active citizens? I'm not going to do it on the spot here, but I think there's a dearth of creativity and marketing skills. Isn't it interesting that we don't have enough ad agencies working on the messaging to get citizens really involved? And when you start seeing pictures that are truly representative of the populations of the cities running those campaigns, not the artificial stock photo of one Asian, one black, one woman, but the ones that really reflect what those communities feel they look like, which is usually all ages, all stages. And I think, interestingly, I'm waiting for photos that look much more generationally balanced, which means fewer babies, because we don't have many, and much more older people. And getting used to those kinds of images and ideas is going to take a little time. We're still anchored in our pyramids, and we got to get to these squares.
Just go to an airport or in a city. That's where life is. So we see it around, and sometimes I totally agree. We're not yet ready to represent it correctly because we're just still full of bias and stereotypes. Stage is open. Any question? Yes, please. I think I'm going to be the mic guy as well. Yeah, no, I'll do it.
Thank you. My name's David Wortley. First of all, Nick,
Hi, David.
I would like to congratulate you on the work that Nick has done to establish, in my view, Newcastle as one of the global leaders in a city of longevity. Which brings me to the point of my question.
No, but it's to the team. Sorry, there's some team members here. It's not me. It's the people here.
I know it's not just you. I know it's all of your team. You've got a fantastic team, but you've built a brand. You built an image. You've positioned Newcastle as a global leader, and you've attracted some very good people to your organisation.
Thank you.
The question really relates to the role that culture and heritage plays in all of this, because every single city has its own identity. And it's been my experience that if you're able to tap into that soul of the city and harness that to a mission like longevity, you'll see some great results. And this is a great way of bringing intergenerational connections. And as Chris Whitty said earlier on, the young people, the 1950s didn't exist, but older people and the lived experience is a great way of building culture and heritage and identity into supporting an initiative like this. I just wondered what other people's views
Thank you, sure. I think one key point has been said. I was trying to show it super quickly before. When we designed this idea of the interfaces can be transferred as a program, but then you have to adapt to the cultural heritage. How much is important the cultural heritage for longevity or for prevention? I think it's key for prevention because it's there where we can intervene on the lifestyles and understanding the differences by country, by touch point, by how much is important.
I'll just give a real quick
Yes,
example
quick.
that we're working with one of the charities in Ireland where they're looking at the heritage around Galway in Western Ireland, and it's for a fund, so they're trying to vote for which building to get rebuilt or repurposed, and instead of the usual text to vote or give money to vote, what they're proposing is that the participants earn civic dollars in the various areas, donate it to the relevant projects. Whenever they hit a threshold, then they get that project promoted. So the community groups and the heritage groups are getting not only sort of a two-pronged attack, they're getting their participants or their members more active out and spending time in parks, but also that feeling of giving back to, and the gamification bit of come on, we need this for our project. So and education as well, that they're showing them why they need that project built. So that's just something we're looking at from that side.
Tina, you want to say something about some of the country Montenegro Roatan that I know?
I mean, cultural context is absolutely key to get right because it's absolutely vital. So I mean, I just came back from a trip to Japan and China, for example, and that's actually where I saw you, David. And we were looking actually at models in Japan, for example, about how, and it's all around the social contract, for example, between employers and employees, right? So they have a health productivity management strategy where the employers are very involved in supporting their employees and especially around their later years because they can't afford to have them drop out because they've got such a huge aging demographic issue. They don't rely on immigration of young workers to come and look after their older people. So they really have to focus on supporting the older generations, and they do it very well, but it's very active, very proactive. They do annual health checks, mandatory reporting, and the companies that do it right are more successful in the stock market, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a whole link and a whole payback, sort of a return on investment sort of cycle there. And we're looking at those models for all the discussions that are taking place at Business for Health. How do we really support and encourage the employers to be in this whole new kind of social contract? What are the strategies that we could take in? Now, I'm not suggesting that we would put up with having our weight sort of checked every year and the employer gets involved in your active weight management program like they do in Japan. I think culturally that wouldn't wash here, but actually... It might soon. Well, but these are the sorts of things that are happening in other countries which we have to take stock of, look at the evidence, shows what's working. Singapore, they have incentives to encourage young people to live closer to their older relatives because they know that it's a much better way of supporting older people as they age in place and what have you, rather than going into a care home where, we have the problem here where a lot of older people don't, they're ripped out of their family structures, their communities, and that is not necessarily a good thing. So these are the sorts of things that we have to take stock of and learn from, but there are the cultural contexts and sensitivities that we have to be aware of. So there's so we can look at what does work across borders, but there are certain things that are going to be more difficult.
Yeah, sure, Aviva.
Can I tag on an overlap to that? Because I can't resist. One thing that's really interesting when you're looking at longevity or generational balance is the history of gender balance and what countries and cultures have done and how they've addressed that issue. So China is interesting with its one-child policy, not so hot, and women who have to retire at 50 by law, which they are now trying to change. Those two things have completely transformed a society. Japan has been an extraordinarily difficult place for women to work, and they have chosen to work over having families and babies. So again, contributing culture that contributes to gender norms that are directly in opposition to healthy demographics and to the support structures which are still largely dominated by, guess who, women. So these things overlap a lot, and you'll notice, I think, in the future that both countries and companies that have done gender well will do generational well. And those that didn't do the gender so hot are going to struggle for all of these reasons.
I think this is a huge takeaway. Alex, I would like to add anything.
Yeah.
I have a flashing red light here. I will release it in a few minutes, but I really would like to give you a chance for a second question in case.
Just a quick addition. I think the thing we need to take from China is the respect for old people and the people who live the long lives. Because yesterday I heard a lot of people talking about ageism in this country, and it's completely different in China, and I think we need to look at that as an example of how we should approach it.
Another question, and then I'll let you go. There is a question there, so thank you so much, Rosie. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Adrian Leather. I'm from Active Lancashire, one of the Active Partnerships. I really like the Citizens Champions concept. I'm just really struck by something that Emma said about the blue zones and the fact that people who got it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's about those health inequalities. And I'd really like the panel's view about addressing health inequalities through this approach and whether they have any concerns about actually widening those inequalities by the creation of this offer.
Yeah, so I'll give you the stage in a second. About blue zones, as you probably guessed, I'm not from UK, I'm Italian. I know at least 15 places in Italy which are exactly like the single blue zone. So why one and not the other 15? And I know there are many other places in Portugal, Greece, Spain. So elevating one place and just to sell some Canonau bottles at the end of the day, okay, that's one of the things. But anyway, what is important, I think, from that narrative is that we need marketing narrative to promote and push forward an idea of longevity. Hence, I think they did a fantastic work in terms of branding, which is needed. I think we keep on this discussion out of the room is a mistake, because we start needing to explain what are the new narratives that we need to help people stay healthy for longer, which is something that it's part of how this world works. Maybe we don't like the world in which we're in, but since the world we're living, I think we have to take advantage of what we know has to be done to involve others to make a change. Sorry, give the stage to you back.
If I could just comment on
Yeah.
the health inequalities piece. I mean, I think that's absolutely fundamental. And of course, all the work that I've been doing over the past 5 years has all been linked around healthy life expectancy, but also reducing the health and well-being inequalities. You cannot have health and wealth without addressing the inequalities piece. It is impossible, and we're seeing that very clearly with the stats that we're seeing post-pandemic, you know. So I think the health inequalities piece is front and central and has to be of everything that we do. You know, Sir Michael Marmot, obviously the Health Equities Network is really championing all this, and it's absolutely fundamental, I think, certainly to what we're doing together, because it just does not work. You know, getting that longevity dividend, as a lot of people call it, you cannot get that until you address the wider inequalities piece. It is impossible, and we have to take that on board, and that is part of the recipe and the solution for the future.
And that's what cities probably can do, democratize the access to many of the knowledge. And I think what Alexei is doing somehow, yes, probably in the beginning will be for a niche or some super cities like Singapore, but can we make it as a commodity? Hence, it could become an element that it's available to all of us. That's what we try to also push with an idea of an open source model for cities of longevity. Please, Alexei.
Yeah, just like a very quick thought. Prevention is way cheaper than treatment. So like in terms of resource allocation, we're doing it quite wrong. Like every country is deprioritizing prevention for some reason. But yeah, actually Singapore is doing quite right. They actually invented a second Ministry of Health, which is solely focused on prevention. That's a good idea, because in other ministries of health, what tends to happen, everyone tends to prioritize sick care because people are dying, and they kind of, everyone knows that they have to do prevention, but they have so many fires to fight that kind of prevention always gets on the back burner. So another idea we might use an example of from Singapore.
Yeah, if I may add, the last point is I think we need a business model for prevention. We have a very structured, well-working business model for cure, even more than healthcare. Yes, but the concept of business model for prevention, so we can prove that what we all know, but engaging the entities probably could help us to speed this process. I have to release you. Thank you so much to my panelists. Please have applause to them.